especially on days like today. I want to talk about my journey on being a parent. Yes, I know.
I know, baby.
I think most of our journeys start by seeing how our parents parent. You know, how they treat us, what rules they have, disciplines, etc. And I think I was very, very lucky to have two parents who were really good. They weren't perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but they were good. They loved us. They showed us how much they loved us regularly every day. They were strict in their own way, and that was the 50s, and so it's like my brother got swatted quite a bit. It was back in the time when it was like the dads would take their belts off and say, bend over, grab your ankles. And my brother did that frequently, but he didn't get hurt. It was just little swats, just to remind you that you're out of hand, okay? But a lot of people didn't have that restraint, and so a lot of kids grew up being very hurt and very much in pain. But I was lucky to grow up in a family where my parents enjoyed us, laughed with us, had fun, you know? And I learned, my dad died right before I turned 6, and he taught me everything that I needed to know during those 6 years. So he taught me how to read. Well, not read so much, but that was everybody in the family. He taught me how to count, how to plant vegetables, how to play, how to have fun with my dogs and everything else. He was full of life and full of happiness, and it was kind of short, but he gave me everything he needed to during those 6 years. And my mother had to take over, and that was a tough job for her because she had 4 kids, ages 6 through 13. And she had to get help from her sisters, and we moved back to where her oldest sister lived. And my mother worked really hard. She had to go back to school to get some more education so she could get a better job and help take care of us. And she was very, very good in that she never lied to us about situations or how tough things were. We had family meetings that she called, that she was honest and above board with us about how tight things were financially, and always knew what she had to do. She did not lie to us. She did not try to make out that things were better than they were. And that's something I have kept up with my kids, that I don't lie to them. I say, this is what's going on, blah, 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 whatever. I'm there for them. I tell them the truth. I'm honest. They know that they can trust me. I could trust my mother. She was a lot of fun, too, because she liked to dress up. It was very embarrassing for me, though, one time when it was a parade in town and my mother dressed up as a clown. And she drove us in the car as the clown. And I was at that stage where I was a teenager, young teenager, and I was very embarrassed. I'm in the same car as the clown. But it taught me a lot because, I love to dress up. And I took my kids on parades. They went with me. And we all dressed up. We did our things, all of this stuff, Halloweens, all that things, dressing up. They knew their mother was crazy. It was okay. But I was fun. And I let them have fun because my parents let us have fun. They didn't tell us, no, we can't have fun. It was like they were fun people. My mother had a really good sense of humor. When I was 4 years old, my mother and dad always had people over for dinner every so often. They enjoyed doing that, having their friends over. But one time my 11-year-old sister was supposed to be watching me, and I was 4. And she had Evening in Paris cologne in her room that smelled really good. I opened it up and I drank it. Because I thought anything that smelled that good should taste good. It didn't. And so as we're walking into the living room where my parents and their friends are, for my sister to tell on me, I started weaving I was like this and all of that, and they're trying not to laugh at me. And then I threw up, and they're still trying not to laugh at me. So the first time I got drunk, it was my sister's fault. And I don't think they got her any new cologne, okay? Because she was supposed to be watching me, and part of that was make sure I don't get drunk, okay? On her cologne, which I didn't know at the time anything about, but I did now. So, you know, I kept all that stuff out of reach for my kids. Not that I used it anymore, but they just, you know, hands off, keep things away. But no, there were so many fun times with my family, and it's just wonderful the things I learned, because I learned by example what to do a lot with my own kids. Because my mother didn't sit down and say, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, don't do that. It was her example. We were taught that, you know, treat everybody else the way you want to be treated. That was the basic rule in our family. And my mother would go out of her way to help people all the time. And taught us just by her example. So we got very, very lucky in the parents we got. I also learned how to be a parent by babysitting. I started babysitting at the age of 10. Some of the first 2 kids that I babysat were friends of my mother. And one of the things I learned by watching their parents with them was that their parents would constantly threaten certain situations if they didn't do certain things. Well, they never followed through. So I learned that you have to follow through with whatever you say. You have to be willing to follow through with it. If you're not willing to follow through with it, don't say it. So that's one of the many things I learned. The second group of kids I babysat turned out to be not just one set, but 2 sets of kids. I was being paid for just 1 set. I never babysat for them again. But anyway, what happened was when I got in, the oldest kid was 2 years younger than me. He was 8 and I was 10, and I overheard him talking to the 2 older girls that he was going to tie me up on the chair. He ended up tied on the chair. Because, you know, if you're going to try and be sneaky, do it a little quieter where the person can't hear you. So he ended up in the chair, and the rest of the kids had a good laugh. And the mothers had a good laugh too when I told them. Because, you know, I think they had problems with him anyway. But no, I learned a lot from babysitting and what not to do and what to do. And also I learned that, like, I used to babysit this young girl, and they had an Irish setter dog. And we used to go out and play in the backyard, and one time she just took her pants down and went shit, literally, excuse my language, in front of the tree where the dog went. After the dog went there, she decided that's where she needed to go. And so I told the parents, and they go, oh God, she does that all the time. And it's like they couldn't break her of it. I'm like, well, if I ever have any kids, that's not happening. Another thing I learned from my mother was, she would say, when she would get really tired, and I knew that she was tired having 4 kids to raise, that, you know, she used to say, because I said so when you said why. And I'm like, well, that's not a good enough reason. So I promised myself that I would never do that with my own kids. And I never have. When they asked me why, if I didn't have the answer, I would go have them help me look it up. And that was very important to me. We did not have the money to have a lot of books, so we got to go to the library a lot. And books taught me a lot about parenting, about living, expanded my horizons, so to speak. I learned a lot from the animals in my life, and in particular, one that wasn't originally mine but was left to me by a roommate who tested my patience. He was a small, doxy, long-haired, pain in the butt, who was an escape artist and would always try and follow me. And I told my kids, I have patience because of Buddy. He taught me to be patient, to not act out of anger, and to just deal the best I could with the situation. So, you know, you can learn from a lot of different places. I learned from teachers too. There were many teachers in my life who taught lessons to students that misbehaved in class. And of course, I grew up in the 60s in school where a lot of times the teachers would sit in the corner on a stool with your head against the wall and think about what you just did and stuff like that. And I didn't go for that with my own kids, okay? That was like, yeah, I didn't like that. But I learned how not to get in trouble by watching how my siblings got in trouble. And if I was going to do that, I had to make sure I knew not to get in trouble. How not to get caught. But mostly one of the things my mother did that was an excellent way of dealing with a situation was she would say, I trust you more than the others. That put a lot of weight on me. And then when I was older, I told my oldest sister that. She said, oh honey, she said that to all of us. You know, that was her way of trying to control us, like, I trust you more than the others. Thank you. And so, you know, I of course bought into that. Because, you know, I was the youngest. I wanted to be trustworthy. I didn't want to get caught either. But it was really a lot of fun growing up in my family. And, you know, it was tough, but it was fun because we always knew we were loved. And so I knew I had to give that to my kids when I had them. That they were loved. And that they would always, always be loved, no matter what. And I would always welcome them home, no matter what. So they once told me that I was their security. I said, so I'm your security blanket? And they go, yeah, pretty much. So they know they can call me, they can talk to me. They can visit whatever, you know, when they need to and can. And they all have animals. They have chosen not to have children. They have chosen to have four-leggeds. And I'm very proud of them for doing that because they're excellent parents. They know exactly how to take care of them. Yes, right? Right? Right, Dotson? Yeah? Of course. My oldest has horses, llamas, sheep, and cats. Not my oldest, my youngest, sorry. My oldest just has seen her dog right now. And she's asked me if I thought she was crazy because she wanted to continue when this dog died to have more senior dogs. And I said, I don't think you're crazy, I think you're wonderful. Because you're willing to like take this animal into your life not knowing when they're going to pass. And that's wonderful. And I'm glad that by my having menageries my whole life and with them and raising them with animals, they're able to give that kind of love to not just animals, but to everybody. And they're very good people, and I'm very proud of them. Yes. But, you know, we learn in so many different ways, and I learned on the job as well. Because even though I had worked for OBGYNs and in perinatal education at a hospital that did not prepare me completely, all the things I went through in my life did not prepare me completely for how I was going to feel when I became a parent. And that you just feel that overwhelming love and just, like this is just the best thing until they don't sleep. And then you're like, sleep, just please sleep. You know, 18 months it took my first daughter to sleep through the night. I still have, to this day, the calendars where I wrote down during those 18 months how often she slept. The different periods of time, 15 minutes here, 45 minutes here, an hour here. And I used to have to go wake my husband up in the middle of the night and tell him, if you don't get up and take care of her for at least 15 minutes, someone's going to die and it's not going to be me. So, you know, he had to learn to get up. But it was one of those things where I was gifted with my second child because she slept all through the night, right away. She might get up once, want some food, and she'd go back to sleep. But I fell asleep before her because she was so good at it. And so it's different. And that's the problem with parenting. Each one of our children, if we have them, are going to be different. You don't know what to expect. You have no idea and you just have to learn on the job. And I learned both my kids were very different, especially punishment-wise. They never did anything really bad. But when they did do something, I would send my oldest to her room because she wanted to be out in front of everybody. She wanted to be where all the action was, and that was not in her room. Now my other daughter wanted to go to her room, so she never got to. She had to sit under the dining room table and think about what she did. So it worked. I also learned from other people's parents, things that they did. I had a friend in college who, her mother had her own 3 children, and then she oftentimes had 2 nieces that came and stayed with them. And the girls would fight, and she would tell them, okay, you're all outside. And they'd get in a circle, and 2 people that were fighting with each other had to be in the circle, in the middle of the circle, and it's okay, now you want to fight? Go for it. And at first they're like, what? We get it too? Like, and so they would have to fight it out, and it got boring after a while. Now when my girls started fighting with each other, I said, okay, you're going to stand opposite each other in the living room, and you're going to walk towards each other, and you're going to do a push-shove fight, because they were trying to hit each other and stuff. So it's like, okay, push, shove, that's simple enough. And they thought, oh yeah, this is going to be fun. And then they realized it wasn't. It was just boring. So that didn't have to last too long because they learned to get along. But my kids love each other. They're very different. They're wonderful people. I wouldn't have it any other way. Do they annoy me a lot sometimes? Yes. But that's a given. We all annoy our parents, and so we get paid back. Like I said, they don't want to have kids, that's fine. They probably don't want to go through what anybody else went through. But they have their kids. People say, don't you want grandchildren? I said, I have grandchildren, they're all 4-footed. And I don't have to send them presents every birthday. But I do send things to them occasionally, yes. And it's like what my daughter will ask for her birthday, my youngest, is stuff for her horses, usually. They need a blanket, or she needs boots for riding, or she needs, more breeches for riding, and things like that. Stuff associated with things that she would need. So my other one, I send her, what they need too. I learned a long time ago, don't surprise my oldest daughter with anything. She doesn't take well to it. My youngest one doesn't care. It's like, because she knows I like a lot of the same things she likes. But I taught my kids to read and write and do math and everything at a young age. Yes, at home. We played Monopoly, we played strategy games, we did all sorts of things together. They were not allowed to have video games. And I was like, okay, I did not grow up with that stuff, and I was not going to go spend money on it. And I was not going to have them indoors all the time. And I would say, my youngest would love to go outdoors, but my oldest, I had to, you have to go outside for your 15 minutes of vitamin D, and then she would go outside reluctantly, and then she'd stay out much longer than 15 minutes. They had friends over that were always welcome. We were able to have friends over. We had friends on our block. My kids had friends over relatively often. But the thing is, I learned that nothing is over with being a parent. I'm still being a parent now. I'm 70, my kids are in their 30s, and they are still calling me and talking and asking for advice sometimes, or just, wanting to hear my voice, because they both live out west, so I don't see them very often. And a great Mother's Day present to me today is that my daughter Joanna has been up in New Hampshire this week doing a certification process for some of her job. And she's coming down this afternoon, and we're going to spend the rest of Mother's Day together, and tomorrow some, and then she has to go back to Montana. So, and take care of all her children. And she won't have a dog because dogs are too needy. And my other daughter loves dogs because she needs to be needed. But parenting does not stop just because they turn 18 like some people think. Some people think that the age of 18, and he's agreed, you throw them out. And it's like, no, you never throw your kids out. Not if you really love them. Not if you understand them. But a lot of us have not had parents that were understanding of what our needs were. And we suffered for that in many cases. But many of those people that I know that had that have overcome their childhood. They've overcome the parenting, and they've learned from other people what they needed to learn. They had other people in their lives that would give them that love, that attention, those hugs that they needed. You don't have to be a female to be a mother. You don't have to be anything. You could be a parent of anything you want to be a parent of. Whether it's a bee. There was a woman once who found a bee that the wings had come off. And she knew that the bee would die. She knew that the bee would die without some help. So she took the bee in, cared for it, would pet it, little things, all of this. And you know, took care of the bee for the existence of it, you know, and gave it a nice, loving home. And you never know who you're going to mother. You never know that it's going to be another adult sometimes that needs some love and attention, that needs a hug, all of that. Parenting doesn't stop, it doesn't start at any particular point. It's with you all along. You have the potential to be a parent, whether you ever have children or not. You can be very maternal, you can be very loving, you can be very caring. It doesn't matter what gender you are, what experience you have. We all have it in us to care for others. And to me, being a good parent is showing that you care. And taking us for a walk when we want to, and giving us treats when we want them, right? Right, Dodson? Yeah? My dog absolutely adores me, which is nice to be adored. But he also is a pain in the neck sometimes, right? They all are, like every child. But I would never trade him in for anything. And being a parent has been really difficult at times, but it's really very rewarding. And I don't think everybody should go out there and be one, because it's a lot of hard work. Don't enter into this lightly. When I worked at perinatal education many years ago, I asked this couple who were 18 and 20 respectively, what made them decide to start having children so early, and the husband said, well, I don't want to be too old to play with them. And I'm thinking, oh my God, you're already too old if you're thinking 20 is old. But I didn't have my kids till I was in my 30s, and that worked out really well because I was more of an adult. I was more responsible. I knew what I needed to do, and I used to tell my children, my job as a parent is to help you become independent, to help you learn how to navigate life. It's not to like look at you and say, oh, you need to do this because that's what I wanted to do, which some parents do. They try and steer their children into be little mini-me's and stuff. I didn't want my kids to be like me, I wanted them to be like them. And when they each decided to go off on their own, I was like, my God, I'm so jealous. I did that myself and I loved it. My mother let me go without a problem. I was already on my own, but she let me move. She didn't fight me moving out of state, put it that way. And, you know, we kept in touch. We wrote letters to each other. We didn't, calling on a phone back then was really expensive, so we wrote letters. And it was great, you know, but when she died when I was 22, it was like, okay, I have a good background. And, but I missed her. And this morning I started crying because I missed her again. And it's been a long time. But, you know, I talk to her regularly. She is not the same person she was when she was here. She is her own person. She is strong. She is a warrior. She has a lot of dogs around her on the other side. And, yeah, she hangs out with my dad. and she hangs out with my sister who passed a few years ago. And they all have their animals. And my sister actually has my youngest daughter's llamas that passed already with her. So that made Joanna feel better that Alexis had the llamas with her. But parenting is, once you become a parent, you never stop, whether you want to or not. No matter how hard it is or how heartbreaking it is if they pass before you. But I just want to let you know that it's worth it. Every bit of it is worth it. So if you're a parent of any kind of anything, any life form at all, whether it's a bee, a bird, anything else that's scaled or feathered or furred or anything, or human, you know, those are the hardest ones. Enjoy what you can of it, and take everything with 20 million grains of salt, because hopefully they will appreciate you when they're older. And, you know, mine do, so I'm very grateful and very happy, and I feel good that I didn't mess up too much. So anyway, I just want to leave you with that parenting is a job. And the payment you get from it is the payment you put into it. And sharing with each other and not being afraid to tell them no, not being afraid to not give in to their demands is a very valuable tool to have, because now my kids can't stand to be around other people who are entitled and enabled and won't work. So anyway, thank you, and for all of you who are parents, keep on keeping on. Thank you.
Okay.